All right, we are live on YouTube.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is the Pistons Talk podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Lance Caparosi. Joined with me tonight is my co-host, Anthony, a.k.a. Pistons Talk. He built the brand. I just hitched my wagon to it. So let's get this started. But after this, do us a favor, go to Spotify, Google, Apple, subscribe to the Pistons Talk podcast, leave a review, drop a rating. But more importantly, tell the Pistons fans. So now, after the introduction, we can get this started. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know, man. How do you like to watch the Pistons from your house? Because we don't go to all the games. Like, it'd be impossible for me.
I honestly have a pretty chill setup in one of my rooms in my house. So it's just got like a TV and just a chair. So I'm usually just watching it, just chilling. But I shouldn't say I'm chilling because I'm actually like full up in my seat yelling at the TV. But you know what I mean? Just relaxed. You know, uh, usually working, whether it's doing social media posts or whatever. But uh, I do look forward to watching the Pistons, even though they only have what was it 9, 10 wins now. I can't keep up, but I still watch them every game just because I'm a diehard. I'm a sicko like that.
So they have 10 wins, which I think they have 5 more than they did at this point last season. I watch the games too. Like when I watch them at home, I usually in front of the TV. I don't have a recliner or anything, but I try to sit in a comfortable chair. Are you a snack guy when you watch the games at home?
Yeah, big time for sure.
And I mean, I love watching the Pistons. I had a tweet like a week and a half ago how I was just ready for this season to be over with because it was a stretch. It wasn't as long of a losing streak. But I mean, this team has no identity without Cade. So it was frustrating to watch them. Like I love Duren, love Isaiah Stewart, Ivy. I love those guys. Like I love this team, but it's just no identity without Cade. So that's kind of what brought this up. But also, I was getting so irritated these past 5 weeks because the way I was consuming and watching the Pistons was almost always exclusively from my phone. And I paid for a bigger TV, and here I am watching it on just a tiny little iPhone for 5 weeks every game. And I'm like, dude, I can't keep doing this. Like even last night, we went to a light show for New Year's Eve, and we're driving through the light tunnel, and I just had my phone plugged into the car watching it. And, just not even really trying to take in the show because I wanted to watch the Pistons. Like, that's how much of a diehard I am. But I'm glad to know we're in the same, category of people watching the games at home where we're just sitting in a nice comfy chair. We got some snacks, yelling at the TV. We don't want to be bothered by anybody. How do you feel about social media, though, and watching the Pistons?
I think if you're on Twitter when the game is happening, there can be full disclaimer. Last night, I had a shit tweet. I had a terrible tweet. And I'll tell you what the tweet was. So I said, Jaden Ivey looks way more comfortable playing point guard last night. He had 1.6 turnovers. I was feeling confident because the game before, he had a really good game against the Bulls.
Yep.
But that, I think that's the fun thing about Twitter is when you're watching the game, it could be Twitter, it could be Facebook, it could be Instagram, it could be TikTok, it could be anything. You could have a take and you full-heartedly believe that you were 100% right, but what happened to me with Jaden Ivey laid an egg? I'm getting quote tweeted like crazy, and I'm getting people are tagging freezing cold takes or whatever the account is, trying to get me on their channel. But I mean, hey man, I just have a good time, talking to Pistons fans, watching the game, and I think that's what's so cool about Pistons Twitters. They're so welcoming to everybody.
But do you feel like, because you tweet, you and I, we both tweet a lot during the games. Do you feel like it becomes kind of a distraction from your viewership of the games?
Well, that's why I watched the game back twice.
That's okay. Okay, I get that. Yep.
So because I'll be posting during the game, whether it's highlights or whatever. So sometimes I don't get to watch every sequence, but I do go back and watch the games back to see if I didn't miss anything. I know we'll talk about the Killian Hayes scuffle earlier. There was a play, beforehand that I didn't get to see. And, I recorded it with my phone and I posted it on Twitter to get more context of it. I think that's why I watch the games back more than once so I can, fully understand what goes into the game, because when you're watching it, sometimes you miss a lot.
No, 100%. Do you ever, this is what I've been doing now too. I haven't done the playback on a lot of games, but sometimes, like, I follow Bryce Simon, aka Motor City Hoops, and he delivers great content when it comes to breaking down a play. Do you ever watch one of those clips and then, or you see something like someone like will give you notes on a play? Do you go back and watch that to like try to find what they were talking about? Because I'll do that sometimes where I'm like, okay, this is what this guy was talking about on this sequence, because I want to learn more about the game as well.
Yeah, I don't. Shout out to Bryce, by the way. Him and Koo had me on their little Pistons playback. That was like a lot of fun.
That's pretty.
There was a guy that I still, routinely do watch on YouTube, B-Ball Breakdown, because I feel like he does such a good job of, like, if you're just like a basketball novice and you want to learn the game, definitely go over to his YouTube channel and check it out. He does such a great job of explaining how a player gets to his spots, what they're doing, what the action is. Like, I do watch that sometimes if I do get bored. Maybe it's just I'm looking for content, or I'm just, wondering about like how the player's doing. Yeah, I will do that. But from time to time, I just, let my eyes see what the player's doing and kind of, just randomly fire off tweets. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong.
Oh, dude, I've been wrong quite a few times. And do you ever delete tweets though? Like, not.
No, I leave that shit up.
Yep, same. The only time I've ever deleted a tweet was talking about Corey Joseph, and I think it changed the word from shot to shit, and it just looked bad reading it that way. So I deleted that one, just because I don't want people to think I thought Corey Joseph was taking a shit from the corner. Like, that's not good. But you brought up the Killian Hayes game. And we're calling it the Killian Hayes game because that's what most people remember from it. But we're not going to talk about Killian Hayes. Where does Alec Burks' performance against the Orlando Magic that night rank on your all-time Pistons performances? He only missed one shot from the field.
So, like, I was thinking about it. I wasn't even focused in on his performance because my mind was still thinking about the shove. And, like, I'm watching the broadcast, and Johnny and Greg are like, yeah, he hasn't missed a shot yet. And I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even realize until I looked at the box score, he only missed one shot. And dude, he's been a flamethrower like the past like 3 or 4 games. Like I was looking, he shoot like 53% from 3. Like just some gaudy numbers just from the outside. I was just like, man, raise that trade value, Alec Burks. Raise that trade value.
That was actually going to be my next question. Like, how much did the incident with Killian Hayes and Moe Wagner, the knockout with his right hand, how much did that overshadow Alec Burks' performance? And it kind of sucks though. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here. Like, I'm glad Killian defended himself, but at the same time, it just sucks that like such a crappy moment like that had to overshadow what Alec Burks did, because this was one of the greatest individual performance I have seen. I mean, it wasn't like a lot of points. It was 32, but he just couldn't miss. And I mean, it was that last shot in the fourth quarter with like 3 minutes left that he missed that final, he missed his last shot, but still went to the free throw line. And I thought, dang, dude, if that fight didn't happen, if that bench clearing didn't happen, we would all Twitter would just be talking about Alec Burks night, and he deserved that moment, and he didn't get it.
Yeah, I just, because I was looking at this topic and I was thinking about it. I was like, man, Tony Snell had a perfect game. And I'm like, to me, it wasn't really that memorable. Like, I would probably put a recent memory of a Piston playing well, like Blake Griffin's 50 piece against Phillies up there with me. If I can even go back farther, Reggie Jackson exploding against Portland when we were down 25 and he scored 30 in a quarter.
Yeah.
Like, to me, those are more recent games where I'm like, yeah, that's in the back of my mind. That was such a great game. Like, this game, I think he had a good game shooting, but I wouldn't even put it in my top 10.
Ooh. Yeah, I was thinking for me, I would have to go back and make a list, but I think it would be anywhere from like 7 to 10 for me. It would still be in my top 10 just because I've never, even though he only took 11 shots, I've just never seen someone so confident with the way he was shooting the ball and just from the arc and then from the free throw line being perfect as well. It was just incredible for me. Unfortunately, it was just overshadowed. And maybe I'm just reading too much into it because But I mean, he also did it coming off the bench. I think that's another piece that we kind of forget when we're talking about this performance, that he came off the bench and did this. And I thought that was equally just as impressive.
Yeah, for sure. It was a really great game. Him and Sadiq Bey had really great games.
60 points off the bench. It was incredible. So this next topic, it's a little interesting, but is it safe to say that Jalen Duren is in some way Dwight Howard?
No, I think it's disrespectful.
To Dwight Howard?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, I like Jalen Duren. I really do. But I see so many Pistons fans like casually like throwing the comparisons
Mm-hmm.
to Dwight Howard. And I'm just like, he's got the body, I get it. He's got the physique of a Dwight Howard, but he doesn't have the post moves. It's just not there. He doesn't have any post moves yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say like rookie Dwight Howard. I think he was definitely a better post player, even though he didn't have that many moves. He was a better post player than Jalen Duren. Also, the other thing, I know that Jalen Duren throws it down pretty hard, but Dwight Howard was so angry when he dunked for some reason. Like there was just so much power. Like every time he dunked, I thought he was going to bring the rim down. And I don't get that from Jalen Duren, but I do see some similarities, and I do think it's okay if you say in some ways he reminds you of Dwight Howard. I don't think he's all out Dwight Howard, because Dwight Howard was a pretty special player in his prime. And I don't want to put that type of, pressure on a Jalen Duren right now. But, the size, the timing, blocking the shots, the nose for the ball when it comes to rebounding, that motor and that energy they play with, I think those are similarities. But I don't see Jalen Duren as the franchise player Dwight Howard was. But I definitely see Jalen Duren being that anchor defensively. Like if Jalen Duren was the guy on the Detroit Pistons, he's not going to lead them to an NBA Finals like Dwight Howard is. I just don't see that in his game. But if you put a good team around him and you let him do his thing, which is rebounding, blocking shots, and just dunking on everybody and their mom, then you could probably build a contender. But we'll just see. But that's my 2 cents on Jalen Duren and the similarities between him and Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone about this, and I see a lot of similarities in Jalen Duren's game and Andre Drummond's game when Andre Drummond was a rookie. I'm talking about before Andre Drummond, got his max contract. I'm talking about when Rasheed Wallace was on the coaching staff, when Andre Drummond was super aggressive, would block everything, would dunk everything. There's a lot of similarities in their game, but I'm not saying Jalen Duren is Andre Drummond, because I think Jalen Duren, what he has going for him is he's already a better free throw shooter. He's already a better passer when where Drummond was in his rookie year. I think his passing is something that is very underrated. People don't talk about it yet. They will. They'll catch on to this to see how good of a passer he actually is. And I think he does have a very nice jump shot. So I think the future for him is bright. He's going to be your future center. And I think a lot of Pistons fans just love the draft pick. They love that the Hornets decided to trade that pick to the Pistons. And I'm happy with them, man. Like, I love watching Jalen Duren.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's just crazy. I can't even wrap my head around him being drafted 13th overall. Like, even just based on his rookie year, you're like, dude, this dude probably should have gone top 7, if not top 5, just based on the way he's playing right now. Jalen Duren is very special. Do you think he has a better motor than Andre Drummond?
That's tough, because I think Andre Drummond, when he was locked in, he could play great defense. He played the passing lanes. He could protect the rim. But like Andre Drummond wasn't already always locked in. To me, Duren, maybe outside of one game this year, he's been locked in for most of the games. I don't want to casually compare Drummond to Duren, but there are some similarities in their game. I just think Duren right now, as a prospect coming into the NBA in his rookie year, he's already a better prospect than Drummond was coming out of college.
Okay, final question about this, and then we'll move on to news. But I was just thinking about this because I saw this. This was a tweet. And what's more disrespectful, to compare Jalen Duren to Dwight Howard, or say that Andre Drummond is a poor man's Jalen Duren?
What's more disrespectful?
Yeah, what's more disrespectful, to like Dwight Howard or Andre Drummond, I guess?
Probably the Dwight Howard.
Yeah, that was too easy of a question. I guess not even disrespectful to compare Jalen Duren to Dwight Howard, but I thought the Andre Drummond is a poor man's Jalen Duren. It was a little funny. Don't get me wrong. I did laugh a little, but I thought, man, what are we talking about when we're talking about with Andre Drummond? How are we misremembering this guy? Because he had a great, like, what was it, 8 years in Detroit? He was phenomenal for a handful of them. It's just we didn't win. That's just what didn't come with his era. That's all.
Well, we drafted poorly to
Yeah.
start. And once he got his max deal, because everyone was loving Andre Drummond on a rookie deal, deservingly so. You know, he was a double-double machine. He got that max contract, and people switched up. And you could understand that when you give the guy close to $130 million, and you're trying to turn him into Dwight Howard. That's what Stan Van Gundy tried to do. He tried to make him into this post presence when that just wasn't really his game. When he was more of just a rim running center. And you see a lot of that in the NBA where there are some high level rim running centers, but you don't build a team around them.
Exactly. Man, that's well put. I love that. Let's move on to news because I know people are itching for us to talk about Killian Hayes. So if you haven't heard, Killian received a 3-game suspension. Hamidou Diallo received 1-game suspension. And the Orlando Magic made their entire bench disappear for 1 game. It was incredible. Is this too harsh of a punishment for Killian Hayes, knowing that Nikola Jokic got 1 game for ending someone's season? It's crazy.
I think I was looking at Brandon Ingram. I don't know if you remember when he almost ended CP3's career if he would have connected with that. He got 4 games. I don't know. Do you remember that fight with the Rockets and the Lakers?
Oh, I know. I do not remember that. Oh, we're going back that far. No, I don't remember Brandon Ingram. I don't remember him doing that to CP3.
Look it up when we're done doing the podcast, and you'll see, like, if Brandon Ingram would have connected, CP3 probably would have been in the hospital. So Brandon Ingram got 4 games for that. Like you said, Jokic got 1 game. I thought if Killian doesn't retaliate and, like, hit him in the back of the neck, I don't think he gets a suspension. But what he did is a natural reaction. I think anybody, if they would have got shoved, running, going to the bench, they probably would have tried to, fight or, shove somebody back. I think Diallo punching him knocked him out, and then Killian just finished it because he was unconscious, man. Like, you see him just fall over on the bench, and, bro, social media exploded. I mean, national media, like Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, I was watching it on their show. Bro, they were laughing that whole segment. They couldn't even keep a straight face. Like, they were laughing. They're just like, everybody gained so much respect for Killian Hayes that all the people that I've seen bashing Killian Hayes, like, he has their respect now. They're like, okay, he's not soft. He is tough. But I think the suspension was fair. You can't cold cock someone in the back of the neck like that.
I just thought, oh man, but I thought the Nikola Jokic play was so much more dangerous, even though I was still like, I'm like, okay, I see why Nikola Jokic did it. Like, I mean, it's still a douchebag move, but I thought his play was so much more dangerous than what Killian Hayes did. Because first of all, Killian Hayes used his right hand. We all know how weak he is with his right hand. So, like, really, how hard could the punch have been? He's left-handed. He's a southpaw. So really, I mean, he can barely dribble with it, and yet we're saying like he deserves 3 games because he knocked somebody out. By the way, I'm kidding about the dribbling thing. He's fine. But it's just, I just thought the 3 games was too much. I thought 1, maybe 2. I thought 2, that should have been it. I didn't think it was that dangerous of a play. Like you were saying at the beginning of this segment, it's a natural reaction for you to want to retaliate in that way. So I don't blame Killian Hayes for it. If anything, I thought Moe Wagner, he got off light for what he did. That was a douchebag move on his part. And he didn't even try to make a play on the ball. And he got what? How many games did he get? 1 or 2?
I think he got 2 games, 2-game suspension. So, like I said, I do watch the games back. And I think what started this whole thing was, I don't know if you remember, Hamidou Diallo blocked his shot. And then he kind of like hit him in the face, and he was like trying to do something, and Duren came over there, and Duren's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, he just walked away. And then like 3 minutes later, that's going to be a backcourt violation if he touches that ball. And he doesn't even see Killian. Like, Killian's like in his peripheral vision. And then he sees that Killian's about to get the ball, so he kind of gives him a little hit check. And then he was kind of surprised that, the Pistons retaliated against them. He's just an instigator. And like, I think he's probably gonna not be as aggressive. I think him getting knocked out and getting punched, uh, by the Pistons will definitely be in the back of his mind next time he comes to Little Caesars.
Did you think the knockout was real though with him? I thought he was just playing dead.
I think he got concussed by that Hamadou block. Honestly, I think he was already concussed.
Oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because I just thought because I was joking about Killian Hayes, but it didn't look like that hard of a punch for him just to go limp and just have his body fall over into two coaches on the bench. I thought it was a little dramatic and a little bit of acting from Moe Wagner. And if he got knocked out, wow, that's incredible. But it just didn't seem like a real knockout for me. I just thought he was playing dead, playing
Yeah.
possum, I
I
guess.
mean, if you watch it back, when Hamadou pushes him in the back of the neck, he falls right into Isaiah Stewart's arms, and he's like kind of already woozy. And then Killian punches him in the back of the neck, and he just falls over. So, like, if you watch that back, he was already knocked out when Hamadou hit him.
I'll have to go watch that back because I thought it was, yeah, man. I thought Killian had hit him first, and then Hami had came and pushed him, but I might be getting it wrong based on what you're telling me. So yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it. But again, I just didn't think the hit was that hard, and I didn't think really any of that altercation anybody should have walked away should have been knocked out because it didn't. I mean, it was a basketball fight. We know those aren't really they're not really that rough.
Yeah, I mean, they're like baseball fights. You don't really see like. Not anymore, anyways. Like baseball fights are kind of like basketball fights. Like nothing really happens. Like the only sport you really see fights is in hockey, and it's like a 5-minute penalty, and then you get to come back.
How I was thinking about this too. Do you think that Troy Weaver is building the new Bad Boys team? Just hear me out. You have Sadiq Bey saying he wants to be the villain, and he wanted to be what compared to the Joker. Isn't that what he was saying? Wanted to be his nickname. So there's one. You got Isaiah Stewart going after the King his second year. That's a Bad Boys thing to do because he had blood dripping from his face. Then you have Cade going for a reverse dunk, pointing at his bros in the stands. And then he gets a technical. That's a Bad Boys thing to happen to a player. And then you have Killian Hayes knocking out Moe Wagner. Is this the early stages of the new Bad Boys for the new Bad Boys?
I wouldn't say it's an early stage for the new Bad Boys, but I do remember during Troy's introductory press conference saying that he wanted to get guys that reflected the Detroit Pistons organization. And what he meant by that is players that play with aggression, players that are high character guys, and players that, understand what the city's all about. And I do think, like you said, he has drafted guys that reflect the city. And I think Pistons fans can respect that a lot.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And speaking of Troy Weaver, the Pistons have signed him to a contract extension. This was like a week and a half ago when this news broke. And it was, Sham Sharnarnia. He's the one that posted this. How many more years did they give Troy Weaver?
There was no contract like details of like how long it happened, but this actually happened over the summer.
Oh, okay. Why was it news then recently?
Because it became public.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the Pistons gave him a contract extension over the summer. I know I was reading Omari Sankofa's article from the Free Press, and he cited that the Pistons gave him this contract extension over the summer. So I think it's a good move by the Pistons to lock him up. I think he's probably the best GM we've had since Joe Dumars. And I mean, that's not really like Joe Dumars did a phenomenal job bringing a championship to the Detroit Pistons. And I think it'd be a bad move to kind of let him go, in my opinion, because I think he started to build the foundation here in Detroit.
How long do you think Troy Weaver will be in Detroit? Like, if you had to put a timetable on how long he would be here, like, are you thinking like 10 or more years? Is that too long for a GM to be with one team?
Man, he was with OKC for years.
I mean, he was never going to get the head job there.
Yeah, because Presti was there for so long, but I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised if he bought a house in Detroit. He likes the city. I wouldn't be surprised if he's here for another 10 to 15 years.
Okay, but here's another GM question. Do you think GMs get bored when the team starts to win too much? Because I think more fun being a GM would be like the roster construction and trying to build a contender.
I don't know, honestly. I feel like if you're a good GM, like I think of the Spurs GM, RC Buford.
Yeah.
He was a great GM. He found talent in the second round with Manu Ginobili. I think if you're a good GM, you still like the process, you still like the draft process, you still like free agency. I feel like if you still have a love for it, it doesn't really matter if you're winning or losing.
Yeah, I think I would be one of those GMs where I would be like, okay, cool, we just won like another championship. This is great. I know we got this guy, he's in his prime. Let's trade him off and let's just restart this whole thing. I think I would be a GM like that. Like I would want to be in a city for a little while and then I would just want to leave it in good hands. Be like, look, I built this. I want a new challenge. And I think the challenge comes from, clearing the old dead weight and then just bringing a new life. That's what I think is the best thing about being a general manager. But I don't know. Maybe you could get comfortable sitting in that captain's chair for a decade and just winning a bunch of games like RC Buford did. I don't know. That doesn't seem that fun to me.
Well, look how long it took him just to get off all the bad contracts from the previous regime. Like it took him. He's going into this would be his third year.
Yeah.
It took him 3 years of eating bad contracts, waiving people, stretching their contracts out because the contracts were still untradeable. Like this will probably be his second year where he's going to have cap space again. Like we could have potentially up to $60 million in cap space. So the Pistons are definitely going to be an active team this summer for sure.
No, and I didn't want to mean it. I mean, I didn't want to just be like, yeah, let me do 3 drafts as a GM, then I'm out. But like, if I'm there for 10 years, in like the first 8 years, we were like, I was just had to do so much different contract manipulation, bring guys in, us having fun in the draft. And then like year 9 and 10, they started winning and contending. I think I would get bored because I'm like, look, I've achieved what I was brought in to do. I built you guys a contender. Now I need a new challenge. I don't know if other GMs feel like that, but those are just my thoughts on being a general manager.
Yeah, I wasn't really saying that. I was just saying like if you're working in a front office, I think you enjoy the process whether you're winning or losing.
Mm.
Like one of my friends, I don't want to name him because I'll probably get mad if I do. He's a scout for an NBA team, and he said it doesn't matter if we're picking in the lottery or we're picking in the second round. He's like, my process doesn't change. I'm still scouting, the best point guards in the entire country or overseas. Like we still do all the same things whether we're winning or losing. It's just a process, and you enjoy the process because you love what you do. And I think Troy loves what he does.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I don't think you go that far with like, just hating your job. You're like, I'm going to be a general manager of the Pistons. This sucks. Like you'll never get that job with that attitude. The scouting thing you're talking about, that seems like a lot of fun because I don't think that's a job I would ever get bored with because how cool would it be to find the next Giannis or a Nikola Jokic or a Manu Ginobili or an Isaiah Thomas in the second round? That would just be so cool to have that. Like whether you're doing it for like your first year or like, your 30th year, that just seems like that's a job that would never get old. Maybe the travel, but the rest of it would just be a lot of fun. Being like, yeah, I'm the guy that found that dude. Like nobody was talking about this guy until I found him. That would be really cool to have. That'd be a cool badge of honor.
Yeah, I back when Jeremy Grant was here, I actually made friends with his sports marketing agent.
Oh wow.
And her husband is a scout for the Pistons, actually. He came from the Pacers. I'm not going to name his name, but she was telling me he's on the road 9 months out of the year.
Oh,
just scouting guys left and right, left and right. It's a hard job. It's a taxing job, but it can be rewarding when you do find that. Maybe you find that Nikola Jokic in the second round, or maybe you get the steal in the draft like a Jalen Duren. You guys are all fist bumping at the draft. Like I think that's a really cool job, but I would not want it.
What we can move on after this, but there was this article. I read this in high school, and ever since I read this article, they were talking about like what it was like to be a scout. Like, what are they looking for? I don't know if you do this, but anytime I see somebody with like short arms, I'm like, you'd be a bad basketball player. Or like I'm looking how long their arms are, or like I'm watching their feet or their hand size. Like all I did is read one article from like Sports Illustrated, and I think I could be a scout. I really don't think I could be, but like the things these guys look for in just people, and like some of them get trapped where they're like, yeah, I'm just walking around like at the mall or something, and I see somebody, I'm like, who is this dude walking around? Look how long his arms are. Look at his feet. Look at him. This guy could look like he could play in the NBA. Like I don't know if I'd ever be able to turn it off, but I don't know. Still, it seems like it'd be a fun job.
Yeah, for sure. Like we're talking about scouts, and one of the comments we got was the guy that found the Greek Freak was an assistant under Joe Dumars in the
Yep.
early 2000s. And that guy, I'm trying to think of his name. I know he's in Orlando right now. I think it's John Hammond was the guy that found Giannis, who scouted him.
Yeah, there was another guy that they brought over to Milwaukee, though. Wasn't it like Horst or something like that was his last name?
Yeah, it's crazy, to the point where like they drafted his brother too. But
Well, the one guy that went with John Hammond to Milwaukee, I guess he had to say, and his name is John something, but it's not John Hammond. Was it John Hammond? I know John Hammond was there, but I'm trying to think of the younger guy that went with him, because that guy actually, I had a class at Western Michigan, and his aunt was the professor there, and she would bring him up a lot, like how he's like his journey and everything. It was pretty interesting. I'm forgetting the guy's name. Do we have any injury news though? Like I know Cade is still out, Isaiah Livers is out, but is there anything else? Like I'm looking on the injuries and there's no news for Livers, no time
yeah,
for him.
he's a game time decision for the next game, but I don't know. It just seems like someone said that I don't really miss his 5 points a game. It's just like we're getting blown out most nights. His 5 points a game wouldn't really matter. I was like,
See,
damn,
other
man.
things he brings. That's mean though about Isaiah Livers. Jeez.
If it was about Sadiq Bey, he'd be laughing a lot harder.
Oh, I'd turn my mic down. That's how loud I'd be laughing. So we got no injury news. Well, no real updates. Just a game time decision, like Anthony said, with Isaiah Livers. So let's get into these topics.
Okay.
Now, I told you earlier that I took one of these topics from a tweet that you had put out, and I apologize for saying you were annoyed or irritated, but I've been annoyed with this. So what do you get annoyed with more, Boban's offense or the way the Pistons play basketball? I'll flip the script a little bit.
What do I get annoyed with?
That's awesome.
Yeah, Lance gets annoyed watching Bojan. I would probably say I get more annoyed when the ball doesn't move, because a lot when you watch the Pistons, it's a lot of one-on-one ISOs, and the ball just doesn't move. Like they don't. Like you watch good playoff teams. Like if you were watching on Christmas Day, that like good basketball teams pass the ball. The ball's not in their hands for more than maybe 3 to 4 seconds at a time, unless you're LeBron, KD, or Giannis. Like those are the exceptions, right? Because they can get to their spots and basically score on anybody.
Yep.
But when you have guys like Corey Joseph, just dribbles, and doesn't pass, I'm going to give Bojan a pass, honestly, because the man is damn near flirting with 50, 40, 90 this year.
Yeah.
He can do whatever the hell he wants. I don't care. Like, I really don't. Him and Steph Curry are the only two players in the league that are averaging 20 points a game, shooting 40% from three and 90 from the free throw line. Like, Bojan gets a pass. Just give him a pair of buffs, bro. Like, honestly.
I don't. Oh, man. Like, let me just make it very clear. I do love Bojan. I did draft him in fantasy basketball. That means something. It's just when you watch him sometimes, it's just he looks off everybody. There was that play. I forget who posted it. They posted a screenshot, and there's like 3 defenders looking at him, and I think it was Sadiq Bey on the opposite end of the floor, and he has his hands up, and Bojan's like, no, I got this. It's so funny that this dude just wants to take over. Like he's in his early 20s. Like, I love Bojan and I love the way he plays basketball when the shot is falling and it's going in. But there are just too many times where I'm like, this guy has such bad habits as a basketball player. He looks off too many guys. He guns for bad shots. And then he just, on top of it, he just complains to the refs way too much. And I just think that hurts the flow sometimes. But
I mean, who do you want him to pass it to?
dude, Sadiq Bey, when he's open, I wouldn't mind Sadiq Bey hitting a few open threes. I got him on my fantasy team now.
So now we know why you're annoyed. You're losing in fantasy, and you need Bojan to hit 30 or 40 so you can win. You don't really hate Bojan. You're just really bad at fantasy. That's all.
That's it. I did want to say, though, I did agree with you, though, about the Pistons ball movement, and that just pisses me off because I feel like for two off seasons, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we have heard from Dwayne Casey that we're going to get an offense similar to the Miami Heat, where it's guys constantly cutting, motion, passing, looking for good shots. We have not gotten that. Why is Dwayne Casey lying to us? Do we not have the players on the team, or can Dwayne Casey not get these guys to buy into playing Miami Heat basketball?
Well, one, the only cutter we have on the team is Hamidou, and he just got back into the starting, not the starting lineup, but he just got back into the rotation. Kevin Knox is back on the bench. We don't have the personnel to run sets like Miami because they have Bam Adebayo. Now, we do have Jalen Duren, who I think could be a similar passer to it. Bam. I have compared Duren to, Bam in the past. I think they're very similar. But I think this is just a young team, and it's hard to really, try to play with a playoff contending team like Miami. But I do think you can teach these kids, hey, like, it's not, one-on-one basketball. Like, there's five guys out there, like, pass the rock. Like, as much as I've crapped on Van Gundy in previous podcasts, you have to admit when he was here, that ball would not stick. It would move from side to side. And it's just, you're not going to win too many basketball games when you're just, dribbling out the clock for 10 to 15 seconds and hoping you can get a mismatch or hoping that you can have your defenders slipping a little bit. If you do want to win basketball games, ball movement is key. And that's why I was kind of annoyed with it. And as soon as I tweeted that, they started passing the ball more.
So when Cade comes back, though, do you want to see an offense where he just kind of dictates everything where the ball goes? Or would you want to see more of a free-flowing offense from this team even when he returns?
See, it's such a difficult thing to ask because I think Cade at his best is when he has the ball in his hands and he gets to his spot. But I'm not saying Cade Cunningham isn't capable of playing wing basketball and passing the ball because I do think he is. I just think right now we just don't really have the personnel to, like you mentioned, play, Miami Heat, San Antonio Spurs type of basketball where, the ball is moving from side to side. I mean, we played the Utah Jazz earlier this year. I mean, you just look at the way they move the ball.
Yep.
Like, you would need good ball movement if you want to be a good team. And I don't know if it's maybe a coaching thing. I don't know if they feel like the players aren't ready to play that type of offense or the players just want to play iso ball. Maybe that all the players don't gel well together. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not on the beat. I'm not in the Pistons beat. I don't know what's going on at practice. But I do think they have shown flashes of passing the ball and playing team basketball. But other times you just see players, just dribble it for 15 seconds and pass it to Bojan or Sadiq with 3 seconds left.
Yeah, it gets boring after a while. I don't want them to play exactly like the Miami Heat or the Spurs. That would be great. Don't get me wrong, but I just want to see more ball movement like you. That's all I want. I want to see more guys getting involved, like the game they just played against the Timberwolves where the bench had 60 points and all five guys that came off the bench were in double figures. That is awesome to me. I love when basketball is played like that where everybody eats. That's just great basketball. I know we're not going to get it from this young of a Pistons team, but I would like to see this offense move in that type of direction, even with the personnel they have now. I just want to see them trying to drill it into their head. Ball movement, ball movement, ball movement. Let's work the ball around and let's get the best shot we possibly can. Because even if it doesn't look pretty, there's going to be better habits established by these guys playing that type of basketball than just isoing and running and gunning. Like I just want to see more from this team, even if they lose.
Yeah, so Dominique Davis, if you are watching on Facebook and YouTube, he made a really great point about DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. He said they played a ton of isolation in Toronto too.
Mm,
Those are two all-star level players.
yep.
I think Jaden Ivey will be an all-star at some point of his career. I think Cade Cunningham would have been an all-star if he didn't get hurt this year. I do. I think he was putting up really good games. He's starting to find his rhythm. But we don't really have that star power yet here in Detroit. And I think if you want the Pistons to be good, you're going to need them to, play more inspired basketball. Like, to your point, like the reason why they had such a great game against the Timberwolves was the energy, because everyone was trying to keep up with Hamidou Diallo and his energy. Like Hamidou Diallo was such a spark plug and an energizing bunny off the bench that the whole bench unit, all those vets like Ronnie Magruder, you even saw Corey Joseph trying to keep up with Diallo. Like that's the type of basketball you have to play if you want to win.
Yeah, and you do have to have a good balance, though. Like you have to have a guy that can create his own shot. I thought that was something the Pistons have lacked for like a real shot creator, a guy that can create for himself and create for others. They miss that, and you need that balance. But I just want to see more ball movement, and that is it, man. I just want to see more. I just want to see this team just play a little bit more freely. That's all. I mean, I got nothing against guys that can create their own shot. There's a reason they get paid as much as they do. Those are special players, but you got to find that balance, and hopefully Detroit does. We'll see.
Yeah, I think they will. It's just, I think I'm just making an assumption. I'm not saying I know anything. I just think the coaching staff is giving them like, I want you to do ABC before I give you, D, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because like I think if we look at like Isaiah Stewart, right? Nobody watching this or me or you could say, yeah, Isaiah Stewart can take it to the hole. Nobody knew that.
Yep.
Nobody knew he could do that. Maybe people that watched him, in high school, but he wasn't doing that at Washington. Like these players are the best basketball players in the world. And I remember listening to a podcast with Shaq. He said I was maybe playing at 10% of what I could actually do.
Wow.
And a lot of coaches do that. They say, I want you to stand in the corner and shoot threes. A lot of players on this team can do a whole lot, and we just don't get to see it.
Yeah, I was always in the school of thought that if you were to give every NBA player equal number of shots, they all could average 25 a night. If you were to give everybody the same opportunity, they're all that skilled. There might be a few guys that maybe they couldn't do it, but for the most part, you get to the NBA because you're really fucking good at basketball. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll just talk about Cade. This is an interesting topic. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm glad we're getting to bring it up though. So Cade will miss 88 games his first 2 years. Mm-hmm. He missed 18 last year and 70 games this year. Do you think it would be wise for Troy Weaver to look for another franchise guy in the lottery this year?
Well, to Cade's point, I think at the end of the year, they shut him down and made up fake injuries. I don't really think he was hurt. Now to this year, it flared up and he gained a bunch of weight. So I'm not really going to put that on him. I'm not going to, give him that injury prone label because I don't think he's injury prone. But we had James on 2 weeks ago. He said that was an injury all the way back in college that he was dealing with. Yep. It just flared up this season. I think Troy and the Pistons have a good shot of getting a top 5 pick this year. And I think they have a shot of adding another talent. But to your question, I still think this is going to be Cade Cunningham's team at the end of the day.
Well, like I was thinking of this topic a little bit more since we've had James Edwards on, because this was a topic we had before we found James was going to come on. So it's been sitting in the docket for a minute. But I was reading some people's tweets and they were like, we've talked about this before. Like, what would you do? What would you do if the Pistons had the number 2 pick? Do you draft Scoot Henderson or do you trade back and draft somebody else? So my thing is like, Cade, he's missed 88 games, whether all 18 last year were due to injuries or not. But my point is, I think you still have to go after the franchise player. Even if Cade comes back healthy, you can't afford to trade that pick back, just because you have Cade on the team. Because even though it's only 2 years into his career, it's still 88 games. He's missed an entire season. That is fact. Whether they sat him on purpose or not, it's still 88 games he's missed over 2 years. That's a full season of basketball. I think it would be wise for the Pistons to find that franchise guy if they were to draft, if they had the number 2 pick, other than trade it. And I guess that's kind of more the way I lean with this question.
Yeah, I think if they had the number 2 pick, they're most likely drafting a guard. Because if you look at any mock draft right now, you're going to see Scoot, Henderson, and Victor Wembanyama at 1 and 2. Now, you could reach for an Amin Thompson at 2 if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to, you really like Amin Thompson, you could. I think there are some really good players in this draft class. Like I like Cam Whitmore a lot. To Ben Foe's point, Brandon Miller. I love Brandon Miller. Keontae George, I was really high on. I know I talked to him. I didn't talk to him, but I had mentioned him to you about a month ago. I'll be like, be on the lookout for that kid. There's a lot of guards in this draft class, and I know Pistons fans are probably rolling their eyes like, yeah, so what? We need another fucking guard. But I think you're going to get a really good player out of this draft class. Now, we're hoping it's number 1, and we're drafting Victor. We're hoping that happens. But, hey, we're just going to have to see what the basketball gods have for us. I think, not having Cade Cunningham for the year, maybe they can be a little gracious and, we can get the French Connection 2.0 with Killian and Victor.
It's, all those names after Scoot Henderson that you mentioned, all fantastic players, but they're not franchise guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess my only thing is like, I guess I don't even really know what I'm trying to say. I just see these tweets from people that are like, look, I mean, even if the Pistons had a chance of drafting Scoot Henderson, I say trade down. I say don't. You know what I'm saying? I'm a little iffy on Cade Cunningham. Like, I don't want to give him the injury prone label, but it's 88 games in his first 2 years. That's a lot of games. We're like that was Zion Williamson. You know what I'm saying? And the New Orleans Pelicans, they had Brandon Ingram. They had another franchise guy. I don't know if like Cade falls off and he is constantly hurt every year. Who do the Pistons lean on? Like that's kind of what I'm getting at. So, I mean, if the Pistons do get a chance to draft a franchise guy, I say they got to do it this year. Even if Cade comes back healthy and never misses another game, you got to take a chance on another franchise guy, just given that Cade has missed 88 games in the last 2 years. Like, if he hadn't missed 88 games, I would say, yeah, you probably could trade the number 2 pick and go for a Brandon Miller or a Cam Whitmore or, a Keontae George. Like, you could trade down and get one of those guys and do something else. But with Cade missing 88 games in the first 2 years, you cannot trade one of those two. You cannot trade the first or second overall pick. You cannot trade those picks just because Cade has missed 88 games. That's my whole point.
Yeah, I do think, again, to Ben's point, I think he is correct. I think Brandon Miller, he's a very good player. He's putting up some really good numbers. And I think Amin Thompson can be a franchise guy. I think Amin Thompson, to me, if he hits his ceiling, he could be a two-way guard, a two-way shooting guard. And that is something that you don't see a whole lot of. There's not a lot of two-way shooting guards in the NBA. I mean, you have James Hardens, the Klay Thompsons, Bradley Beals, Zach LaVine. They're all basically one-way shooting guards. There's not a whole lot of, lockdown shooting guard out there. I think Amin Thompson can be that. I think Brandon Miller, the one thing that I don't want to say I'm not as high on, but his finishing around the rim at times leaves me wanting more from him. But I have to remember he is a college prospect. And I think that a lot of Pistons fans during draft time, and we're only in January, just wait, you guys. We're going to go way deeper into draft over the next 5 months. I like Brandon Miller a lot. I think if you're a Pistons fan and you're looking for a small forward, he should be at the top of your list because he would fit like a glove next to Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. Him and Sadiq out there, man, that'd be pretty.
Yeah, I like Brandon Miller for the fit playing alongside Cade and Ivey, but I wouldn't trade an opportunity to draft Scoot Henderson to draft Brandon Miller, though. That's kind of like my whole point of the question. Like, yeah, Brandon Miller's a nice player. I don't think he's a franchise guy, though, because of what you had said. He's not very good around the rim. Like, I've seen that. I know that's like the biggest con against his game. And didn't Amin Thompson just get cooked by Bronny James a few weeks ago for like 43?
I'm not sure. but Amin Thompson is still, him and his brother are going to be top 10 picks.
No, I've
Like,
heard a lot about Amin Thompson. I know, but I just like I'm saying, like these are some. And again, I'm not attacking Ben in any way. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying this is what I'm talking about. Like, guys would be like, no, look, we're good. We don't need Scoot. We can get one of these other guys. No, the point is you got to get Scoot if you had a chance, or Victor Wembanyama. You got to get one of those guys if you have the chance. Like, you don't pass up those guys for any of these other names.
no, like to your point, like if you're at 2, you draft Scoot and you worry about it later. I think of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I mention them a lot, and people are probably sick of it. But we can go back to the rebuild. When LeBron left Cleveland, they drafted Colin Sexton. The previous year, they drafted another guard, Darius Garland.
Yep.
Year after that, they drafted a wing in Okoro, who's a very good defender, but he can't really shoot. Then they got in line for an Evan Mobley. And then they made themselves available in trades because they had the cap space. And they traded for Donovan Mitchell. And they're a top seed in the East. If I'm a Pistons fan and I look at the Cavs rebuild, because they're a small market like Detroit, that's a rebuild I would try to replicate. Because look how fast they turned it around.
And look, they didn't panic when the guy they drafted in Colin Sexton went down with an injury, even though he was playing pretty good ball. And they didn't panic when Darius Garland had a so-so rookie year. Like they were just saying, like, yeah, even though we got Colin Sexton and a lot of fans view him as the franchise now that LeBron James isn't here, we're going to go for Darius Garland because we can't afford to pass up great players. We can't afford to pass up a great talent like him. Because even though we got Colin Sexton, but some fans, and I'm just talking to the Pistons ones because those are the ones I talk to the most on social media, you will see Pistons fans that are willing to pass up on great talent because of the people that are already on the team. And I'm pointing out that Cade will miss 88 games his first 2 years. So my point is, and I've said this 3 times, you gotta draft a franchise guy. If you get that high of a pick, you gotta go for the.
Oh, they will. They will. The Pistons aren't dumb. They know that they need talent. They know that they lack talent.
Yeah.
I think it's what you're getting into right now is the fans and what the fans want. The fans aren't making my draft picks. Thank God. Because some fans, I saw Amani Bates had a really good game the other day. And I was reading the comments on Swish Culture's Instagram, which if you don't follow Swish Culture, if you're like a basketball nerd of like, like, oh, whatever happened to that guy? They literally post, like, I saw a Dante Exum highlight reel. Didn't even know he was still playing basketball. So shout out to Swish Cultures for that. But a lot of people were saying Amani Bates would be a top 5 pick. And I think those are the type of players, or not players, fans that you interact with and you think that we all think that way. We don't. I think most Pistons fans are pretty rational and they're pretty smart. If they had the number 2 pick, I guarantee you they'd want Scoot Henderson.
No. I'm not calling out all the entire Pistons fan base. This was just things that I have seen on Twitter, or on Facebook where it's like, look, we got everything. We don't need this. We don't need that. It's like, no. Don't lose sight, of what we could do with this rebuild. Like, even if we have too many talented players on this team, you could always trade one and bring somebody back and do something different. It just gives you more pieces to play with. That's it. But I don't know. Like, if I'm preaching too much, I apologize to everybody. I just don't want people to get lost in like, yeah, Cade's really good. He's just hurt. And that's my biggest concern is I don't want people to look and think like, man, we got Cade. We're set in stone. We're good. We're fine. If he was healthy, yeah, I would agree with you guys. But since he's been hurt and missing so many games, I question it. And, I don't want to be one of those fans that says, let's look the other way instead of drafting this guy. But if you're ready, we can move on because I'm just going to keep repeating myself until people listen.
No, go for it.
I think this is a more fun topic, but the more likely of an outcome for Killian Hayes, a super 6-man like Manu Ginobili in Detroit for years to come, like he's basically passing up the individual stuff for the better of the team, or traded from Detroit and becomes a multiple-time All-Star. Like, what is the most likely outcome for Killian Hayes? And I'm just doing this squarely based on how he's playing right now.
I think he would be probably in this outcome. I think he gets traded.
Okay.
Because I think his ceiling right now would just be a backup point guard, even though he is playing well. You still have Jaden Ivey and you still have Cade Cunningham playing your guards. and I just don't think, even with how well he's played as of late, I still think he's your backup point guard. And I just don't think that I don't think you're going to start Killian over Cade. You're not going to start Killian over Jaden Ivey. I think you're still going to have him off your bench. And
Yeah,
that would be a luxury to me, honestly.
no, and that's what I'm saying. The outcome is, would Killian Hayes be a super six man like Manu Ginobili?
Yeah, I don't see that.
You don't see that? Okay.
No.
Just as a, I mean, I don't think like when I say like a super six man and I'm comparing him to like Manu Ginobili, when I say super six man, do you think of like more of the numbers Manu Ginobili put and say, yeah, that's not ideal for Killian? Or are you saying like Killian couldn't be as effective as a Manu Ginobili off the bench in some capacity?
I think it's more of a numbers thing because I think at his ceiling, he's giving you like 12 and 6, 12 and 7 a night. And I think I think that would be such a luxury. He'd probably be the best backup point guard in the league, honestly.
But you don't see that for Killian, like being like a 12 and 6 guy off the bench for Detroit?
I think he could, depending on like if you still keep the bench that we have intact. But I just don't see him being like in the 6-man category because I just don't think the shooting numbers would be there. I don't see him shooting, 40+% from three when you have to compete with guys like Jordan Clarkson on a yearly basis. Like Alec Burks right now could be in the running for 6-man of the year, just the way he's playing.
This is true. This is very true. Yeah, I was kind of looking at Killian and I was wondering, I'm like, would he be an effective backup piece? Like if he had to be moved back to the bench, like could he be an effective 6-man? Or is he one of these guys like if he's not starting, the numbers aren't going to reflect the play? Like you're not going to get the best of Killian if you bring him off the bench. Like, I guess that's kind of the line I was thinking. Like, do you still get a good Killian if you bring him off the bench, or do you have to start him to get the best version of him? What do you think?
I think he just needs the ball in his hands. I don't think it matters if he's starting or he's playing with, the bench guys. I think as long as he's got players around him that fit his skill set, he can produce.
All right. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. You want to do some of this Pistons talk, player of the win? Because we have 2 of them this week, which is surprising.
For sure.
All right. So, man, what did we have? They beat the Magic 121-101. We know this game. This is the Killian Hayes knockout game. Who's your player of the win?
Killian.
You're going to go Killian because of the knockout? Why are you going to go with Killian?
Because if he doesn't knock out that game, I don't know if we win.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I got to give him the player of the win just because he stood up for himself, and a lot of fans have labeled him as soft, and just even Sada Baby has labeled him as soft, and I'm sure when Sada Baby saw that, he was just laughing and say, "Oh, okay, I see you."
It seemed like for a moment Killian Hayes was like the only guy trying to play in that game before he gets taken out, before he gets ejected. Am I misremembering that, or is that how you kind of remember that game? Because he was kind of all over the place. The numbers don't really reflect it, but I felt like in that game before he got ejected, he was the only guy that really wanted to be there playing against the Magic. It didn't feel like anybody else wanted to show up.
I mean, Alec Burks and Sadiq Bey showed up.
Well, they did, but it felt like afterwards. So, okay.
Yeah, it felt like 2 tanking teams just playing each other.
What about Jalen Duren? How close was he being to your player of the win? He had 18 rebounds.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put him in there in consideration. Honestly, if I had to split it, I'm being serious. I would probably give player of the wins to Burks and Sadiq for giving you 60 points off the bench.
Yeah,
I couldn't pick one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was hoping that we would come to an agreement on a co-player of the win because those 2 put up 60 points off the bench. I mean, they played phenomenal. You got 35 minutes out of Sadiq Bey, 28, 8 and 4. Great game from him. 32, 1 shot miss for Alec Burks, but 18 rebounds for Jalen Duren. Do you think we see a 2020 game from him this year?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Rookie year, we get a 2020 game from Duren?
I think at least one, yeah. I think there'll just be a game where he just can't miss, and I'll just grab every rebound.
Oh my God! I hope he's been rebounding the hell out of the ball recently. It's been so much fun to watch.
Did you know he was the 2nd leading rebounder behind Sabonis in the month of December?
No, I did not know that. Wow!
And the entire NBA, yeah, he was right behind Sabonis.
What were his averages for the month of December?
I'd have to look it up, but I remember seeing a stat saying him and Sabonis were the leading rebounders. I think it was like close to almost 14 rebounds a game.
Did you? Wow, that is incredible. Did you see that stat about Bojan coming, I think, from Pistons Muse, where I think he's leading the league in points per ISO possession with at least 6 attempts per game?
I did see that. I did. I'm looking up his rebounding right now. So I do apologize. This is terrible podcasting.
No, it's all good. We're just going all over the place. But okay, we got another win. This happened last night, 116-104 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think we got to have players of the wins, but who are you taking with the player of the win from this game?
For Minnesota, I got to give it to Marvin Bagley. I thought Marvin Bagley played a really good game off the bench, 18 and 10. Rudy Gobert just would not guard him. Bagley just had so much space. And I don't know did you see that quote from Naz Reid after the game?
Yes, I did, dude. That is awesome. I love when players have drama in the locker room.
So that was Minnesota's 6th straight loss. And Naz Reid wouldn't really say anything, but he was just like, we know why we suck. We know why we're a bad team. He was basically saying, yeah, it's because of Rudy Gobert.
Do you really think he made the team that bad, or is just Minnesota such a terribly ran franchise?
I think they overpaid for Rudy Gobert.
They definitely did.
They're starting to see it. One of my buddies texted me, they're like, now they know what it's like to trade for Blake Griffin. And I was just like, no. I said, Blake was actually good for a year before his knee exploded. I said, Rudy Gobert doesn't bring anything offensively. And like, when Cat's not out there to like kind of hide his deficiencies offensively, it's magnified like tenfold.
You just reminded me of this. Someone offered me Desmond Bane for Karl Anthony Towns in fantasy. Would you take that trade?
Well, I haven't both on my team, so no.
I just thought, I'm like, even though Karl Anthony Towns is hurt, I can't take Desmond Bane over him right now. I just can't. My team is too good. I can't sacrifice this guy for Desmond Bane. I'm going to go with a little bit. I'm going to say something wild here for my Pistons talk player of the win. I'm going to give it to Marvin Bagley, Alec Burks, Kojo, Hami, and Rodney McGruder, the 5 guys off the bench, all scoring in double figures, carrying the slack from the starters this game. 1 point from Ivy, 3 from Jalen Duren, 6 from Isaiah Stewart. Yeah, player of the win. I'm going to those 5 guys off the bench.
So Pistons bench was the player of the win.
Yeah. Well, you got Marvin Bagley in there. He had a great game, 18 and 10. But I mean, it's so funny too, because Bojan actually had a great game. He only missed 2 shots in that game, and he had 28 points with, 6 rebounds and 5 assists. He had a good game, but I have to give it to the bench because, dude, they carried the slack from the starters, man.
For sure.
Okay, let's look a week at the schedule. So tomorrow, Monday, or tonight, if you're listening to the podcast, they play the Portland Trailblazers in Portland. This is the second. What was this? This is their 3rd game of their road. Being on the road. Anyways, we have Trailblazers tomorrow at Portland. Then we have the Warriors on Wednesday, and then we have the Spurs on Friday. We'll just go with those 3 away games. How many games are they winning out of those 3, Anthony?
I think they're going to drop to Portland because Gary Payton just made his debut.
Okay.
So Gary Payton's actually a problem. And we get to see Jeremy Grant. It's the first time we're going to play Jeremy Grant in the Portland Trailblazers. It's going to be a really interesting game because a lot of Pistons fans are going to be salivating at Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant playing in a different uniform. That'll be a really good game to watch for sure. But I think it's going to be an L. I think they could beat the Warriors because there's no Steph Curry, obviously.
Yeah.
I think you can't beat the Warriors. Seems like every time James Wiseman and Isaiah Stewart play, Isaiah Stewart just makes him his bitch. It's just what it happens. I mean, they have a long history, but Isaiah Stewart always comes out on top. And I think you can beat the Spurs too, but you probably don't want to beat the Spurs. You want to definitely. That's going to be a game where we look back at it and you see the Spurs with like a top 3 pick, and you're like, "Fuck, we should have lost."
Man, are Pistons fans really salivating over Shaedon Sharpe still? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, a lot of Pistons fans like they really wanted Benedict Mathurin, Shaden Sharp, and Jaden Ivey. Um, I know I was a fan that like I didn't really think we would do. I did think we were going to make the play in if we were healthy and we played all of our vets. But I wasn't opposed to drafting Sharp because I saw the potential.
I picked him up one time for like a couple games in fantasy, and he did all right for me. But I don't know. I'm still happy with Ivy. I just didn't know Pistons fans were still, kind of griping about Shadon Sharp. I didn't know that was still a thing, but I guess it is. I think Portland still wins that game. I mean, they have a pretty decent team. Like when you look at it, when you look at the roster, they got some nice pieces. Like I like Josh Hart. They got Jeremy Grant, Damian Lillard, Anfernee Simons. You got Chauncey Billups as the coach. I still think Portland takes that game. Pistons and Warriors, dang, dude, that's a tough game because you're right. Like the Pistons could win that game, but it also feels like, I don't know, Jordan Poole could just go off or something. So
yeah, it's definitely a weird game. I think they're going to be 2-1 though this week.
Yeah, man. Last time, man. So I said they lose to Portland. The Warriors. I'm going to take the Pistons over the Warriors. I'm going to join you in that. And I'm going to take the Pistons over the Spurs. I feel like they're going to win 2 games. I'm with you. I think they go 2-1 through these away games. We also have the 76ers playing the Pistons on January 8th. I mean, I don't know if you want, that's next Sunday though.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but we can talk about it for a few minutes before we do get into this Q&A because a lot of people are chomping at the bit for the Q&A segment.
All right.
TNT decided to not broadcast our game.
What is the reason behind that? Was that just because Killian Hayes started a potential war between 2 countries, him and Moe Wagner?
I don't even know. It's just we had one nationally televised game, and it was against the 76ers in January, and TNT decided to not broadcast that game and give it to the Heat and OKC, which I don't know. I mean, yeah, we have 10 wins. I mean, every team at least gets one nationally televised game, but we don't get one. So I don't really get the process behind that. I don't know if it's the Killian thing that they don't want to broadcast us because they probably wouldn't make any money. It's probably a money thing at the end of the day.
So they play the 76ers on Sunday and then on Tuesday. I don't know which game it is though, but yeah, I just thought that was BS though from TNT to pull that game and give it to Oklahoma City. And then I think they're actually bumping the game up. They're actually starting it 30 minutes earlier than what it was originally scheduled for. TNT just sucks. I wanted to see the Pistons on a nationally televised game. I mean, who doesn't want to see their favorite team on national TV? I don't know why the NBA did this. Hopefully we get some answers at some point. Hopefully we do. But that's it. What do we have for the Q&A, man?
We have a couple. We have 7 that I did mark up. So Banks, as usual, he's always in the comment section. So shout out to Banks.
Appreciate you, Banks.
Question for y'all. Do y'all think this draft and free agency will be more pressured offseason because you can't miss on the draft or free agents?
I think every draft has, its own unique set of pressures. So I'm not going to say that this is the most pressured offseason. I think that's going to happen when Troy Weaver needs to make moves about this young core. I think there'll be more pressure on him during that offseason than there would be this one. I just think this is kind of like a normal offseason for the Pistons. I don't think there's any more pressure for this one than there was past ones.
I would say this is probably Troy Weaver's first test. It's a Banks question. I do think there will be some pressure because you have local radio stations like 97.1 The Ticket questioning what you're doing. Another 20-win season. Pistons fans are irritated of 20-win seasons. They want to start competing for the playoffs. I mean, we haven't been to the playoffs since 2016 with Blake Griffin.
Wasn't that 2018? Either way, it's been a minute.
I'm sorry, you're right, 2018. But still, it's been a few years. I think this is probably going to be the most important offseason Troy Weaver's had since he's gotten here.
how do you and I take such different stances on that? Because I just don't think it's that pressurized this offseason. Because I think, even though you and I have talked about, like, it kind of sucks that the Pistons haven't missed the playoffs, but you and I, and just like a lot of Pistons fans understand that this process could be a lot longer. So I don't think there's any pressure on Troy Weaver this offseason. I think the pressure comes when, like I said earlier, you have to make those difficult decisions about the young guys we're watching on this team right now, because they're not all going to be here in a few seasons. I think there's more pressure on him for that than.
Well, the reason why I said it's going to be probably a pressure situation for Troy is you're going to have a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
You've told us by year 4 you're really going to flip the switch and start competing. And there are players in this free agency class that you could go after, and they could make you a playoff team. I think, like I said earlier, I think this is probably going to be the most aggressive you'll see the Pistons for this free agency. I think they're going to go after guys that can actually win you games. I think they're going to attack the draft strong, whether they use their cap space to get 2 draft picks again, or they use their cap space to try to get a big fish in free agency and try to build more foundation pieces. But I do think this is going to be probably Troy Weaver's biggest free agency and biggest draft he's probably had since coming here.
I do agree with you, though, that he's going to be aggressive. I do think that we're going to see that from Troy Weaver. I just don't think there's going to be pressure on him this year. I think, and maybe you'll agree with me or not, maybe really the pressure might be there depending on how the Pistons finish the season. Like, if they finish winning a few games, there might not be that pressure. But if they lose out and, maybe the lottery doesn't fall in our favor, there might be more pressure for him. I might like this question more towards the end of the season than right now.
I think the way I'm looking at it is, since, Troy has taken over, you've won, well, we're not even done yet, but let's say we win 25 games. I mean, you haven't won 30 games since Dwayne Casey's first year.
Yeah.
Fans are very impatient. And, this is Dwayne Casey's 5th year here. And, obviously things change. They decided to rebuild. But, when you don't hit on all your draft picks, it hurts you. And the rebuild does take longer. I think Troy's first draft, he decided to make trades in a weak draft class, in my opinion. I think there are a select few players in that draft class that are actually star players. I would say there's probably maybe, I guess you could say 5 that are actually star players, and we didn't draft a single one. I'm not talking crap about any of those guys. I think they're really good role players. Yeah. I think at their peak, they're high-level role players. I think Killian Hayes is a good role player. I think Isaiah Stewart, really don't know what he's going to turn into, but I'm hoping he can be a starting power forward for years to come. And I think Saddiq Bey, obviously, he has a bench role now, but he's a good role player. You need him to be a good role player. You don't want him to be a number 1 option. But like I said, the 2020 draft was a very weak draft class, and he decided to, trade up to it and, get key pieces. And I think that's why the rebuild has taken so long, because you haven't really hit on a draft pick. I mean, obviously you win the lottery and you get Cade, but everyone was going to draft Cade if they got the first overall pick. Yeah. He was the best player of that draft class. You drafted Jaden Ivey, best player available at 5. So I think this is going to be a very important summer for the Pistons, and I think they're going to be aggressive. I think this is going to be probably the most fun Pistons fans have had in a summer, because people are just scrolling their phone waiting for that Woj notification. I think it's going to be crazy this summer.
I do agree with you, though. Let me make that very clear. I agree with you that this is good. Probably it's a very important offseason. I just don't know if he feels the pressure, because he has had success in other off seasons. Even though we were just talking about his first draft, like, he still did find nice players. You got Cade, you lucked into Cade the next year. Then you got Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. So, and I mean, he's also made great, we got Bojan for practically nothing, and he's made good moves. So I don't know. To Banks's question, I just don't see the pressure there. But I do agree with you, Anthony, that it is a very important offseason. And I think that Troy Weaver is going to be very aggressive. So great question, though, Banks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think more of the fans are putting pressure on Troy than actually anything else, because they're sick of winning 20 games a year. And you can't really blame them for that, because it's miserable to watch night in and night out.
Oh, like I told you earlier, man, I had made a tweet that I wish the season was over, like a week ago because I'm so tired of it.
Okay, we do have another question from Banks. This is, I feel like we've answered this one before, but we'll do it again. Let's say we get a lineup of Cade, Ivy, Victor, Duren. Who do y'all think would have to sacrifice the most, and who would suffer the most?
Out. Hang on, I'm waiting for the lineup to appear on my screen. Out of those guys who misses, hang on, can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Okay, so I said, let's say we get a lineup of Cade, Ivy, Victor, Duren. Who do y'all have to sacrifice the most, and who would suffer the most?
Ooh, out of those four, I think Jaden Ivey would. He'd probably give up the most in terms of. I just because it would probably be like you have Cade and then you have Victor, so those guys are going to get a majority of the shots. Because when Ivy was drafted, I was thinking this dude's probably the number 2 option and a guy that you could have to close out games. He wouldn't be the number 2 option, and I don't think that you would really be relying on him to close out games. So I think he would have to modify his game to fit with the rest of them. So I think he would sacrifice and would suffer the most playing alongside Cade, Victor, and Jalen Duren. Even though Duren's not going to take anything from him offensively, but you're going to want to keep the anchor of your defense happy. So you're going to look for shots for him. So yeah, I think Ivy would be my answer.
Yeah, I would think I do have kind of a crazy hot take. I think if the Pistons land Victor, I think they may package some of their players to get a legitimate shooting guard.
Mm. Ooh,
But in his scenario, I do agree with you. I think Ivy would probably have to take a step back with Cade and Victor because they're going to run a shitload of pick and rolls. But that's just my scenario. I do think if you do land him number 1 overall, I could see the Pistons packaging some of their core pieces to try to get a veteran to help them win.
Do you think that they would let it ride though with the young guys and then they would make a trade the next offseason? Or do you think if they get the number 1 overall pick, they're taking calls for some of these young guys?
I think they would play out with Victor to see what they have to make sure he can go through a whole season without getting injured.
Yeah.
But if they feel very confident in his playing ability, I think that's when they do make a move. But that's the beauty of rebuilds. Like I mentioned, the Cavs rebuild. Like they traded. They didn't really trade a whole lot to get Donovan Mitchell. Like they got Donovan Mitchell on pennies on the dollar, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you think about that trade, I mean, it's kind of lopsided in the Cavs' favor for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Great question again, Banks, though. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, he always has like those questions where I'm just like, man, I really got to fucking think.
I just imagine he just has a cell phone and he's like driving and he's like, you know what? I got to write this question down, saving it for the podcast. Appreciate it, man.
So this is a Marvin Bagley question. We don't really talk about Marvin Bagley too much on the podcast. Is Bagley moved by the deadline?
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and say no. I think the reason they extended him because they see him right now as a piece of the future, and I just don't know if Marvin Bagley would net you a lot. Just because he's been banged up a little this year, and you haven't got to see. He's been pretty much banged up every year he's been in the NBA, but we haven't really got to see. We saw flashes of Marvin Bagley. I just don't know how high his value would be. I think if he had been healthy and he had put together more of these 16 and 14 and 7 games or whatever, like he was last year, his value would be higher, and you would see there'd be more likely of a trade to happen. I just don't know if I see it this year, though.
I know when we had James on a couple weeks ago, we did ask him about that.
Yeah.
If he did see Bagley getting moved, he basically said if a star becomes available, the Pistons may package him for the salaries to work. But I think the Pistons, the reason why they did give him that 3-year contract is they value him as a rotational piece, whether he's in the starting lineup or whether he's off the bench. I think having him off the bench is such a luxury, and I think he's a player that I think the Pistons want to keep because getting a guy that can give you, 14 and 7 on a nightly basis off the bench, and he's a big on top of it. You don't really see too many, power forward centers that can do that in the NBA right now.
And he does that in like what, 22 minutes per game? I've always
Yeah,
said Marvin Bagley is more valuable at 22 minutes per game than he is at 28 minutes per game because he's a luxury, like you said, off that bench. And yeah, I just don't see him being moved by the deadline unless it was like, some crazy trade and they like, we got to throw Marvin Bagley in, like you said, for the salaries to work. But I just don't see that happening this year.
for sure. We have a question from Dominique Davis. Always good to see him in the chat. Do you have? Oh wait. Do you trade Ivy for assets if you draft Scoot?
You know, I would. That's the tough thing because speaking it from like, if I'm looking at the NBA strictly as a business, yeah, dude, you got to trade Ivy for assets if you draft Scoot. But also like the basketball fan in me thinks that Ivy, Scoot, and Cade could work as starters. So I would probably hold off on it, but I could see the Pistons making a trade, trading Ivy for something if you do land Scoot Henderson, because those two, I'm not saying Scoot and Jaden Ivey are like equally similar players, but they're going to have similar roles for your team.
Yeah, I definitely think that. Yeah, you have a lot of guards, and that's where a lot of fans look at the depth chart. Like you got Cade, you got Killian, you got Ivy. This hypothetical question, you would have Scoot. I do think the Pistons would look at that. They would look at exploring options to see if they could possibly package somebody, but I don't think Ivy would be the player to get traded. I think Killian would probably be more of the player they would look to trade, just because I don't want to say Killian doesn't fit with Cade and Ivy. I think Killian fits off the bench, but you're not going to have all four of them because they're going to need the ball. They're going to want all of them want to start, obviously, but you would probably look to trade probably Killian that in this situation, Dominique. That's just my opinion, though.
But who do you think they get more calls for, Jaden Ivey or Killian Hayes if the Pistons draft Scoot Henderson?
Oh, Jaden Ivey for sure because he's still a very electric. He's going to be a very electric player. I don't know why I said still. I think he has more trade value right now. I think you've seen him play shooting guard. You've seen him play point guard. You've seen just his infectious energy, him dunking the ball, him passing the ball, being a little bit more locked in on the defensive end as of late. I still think he has a ton of value. I think he has way more value than Killian right now.
Yeah, and he's a one-man fast break when he gets that rebound and sees a lane. I agree with you. If I'm the Pistons, I'm trying to trade Killian Hayes. But to answer Dominic Davis's question is, I think that Ivy, yeah, you would definitely try to trade him for some assets if you drafted Scoot Henderson. Because, his value is just, we've already seen a handful of plays. Like, his value is just going to be through the roof during the offseason because there's going to be teams that look to him if the Pistons draft Scoot Henderson and say, hey, Ivy might be on the out, and there might be something here where he could probably be our franchise guy or be one of our guys, and we could build a contender around him. I don't know. I just think Ivy would probably be the odd man out just because his value is so high, but I would rather trade Killian than Jaden Ivey if Scoot Henderson came to Detroit.
Yeah, Dominique said he mentioned Ivy because he said that his value is higher, which I agree.
Yeah,
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
We do have some more questions for Dominique. We got two more from him. Is Rudy Gobert trade the worst in NBA history?
Oh man, I'd have to go back and really look, but dude, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah, I would say from just the draft capital alone, yes. You gave up 5 draft picks for this guy, and he's a defensive anchor, and he doesn't really do anything outside of protect the paint, and he can get in foul trouble very easily. Yes, I would say of recent memory and having recency bias, yes, it would probably be the worst trade in NBA history, but I'm sure you could go back and look, just seeing. Like, I was looking what the Pistons gave up for Rasheed Wallace, and it was pennies on the dollar. Like, they traded guys like Lindsey Hunter and Chucky Atkins.
Bob Shura.
Bob Sura and start with the Z. I can't say his last name. But, like, they literally...
Braca, yeah.
Yeah, they got Rasheed for pennies on the dollar.
and they got Lindsey Hunter back because he got that buyout with Boston, I believe.
Yeah, they did. So
Um,
that's funny. It's a
let
funny
me
question.
let me ask you and everybody else watching this right now what their thoughts are. Do you guys think the Paul George trade was a bad trade for the Clippers because everything they gave up for Paul George and they haven't won anything with him in Kawhi?
I don't think that was a bad trade. I just think that he got traded to a conference that was competitive. I think the reason why I put Gobert on a bad trade is because Minnesota gave up basically all of the young players outside of Anthony Edwards to get him, and Danny Ainge is probably laughing to the bank because that's not the first time he's got multiple first round draft picks for a player.
Yeah. No, oh man, what about the speaking of Danny Ainge, the Boston Celtics to the Brooklyn Nets? How bad is that trade for Brooklyn? That has to be one of the worst trades ever.
Oh man, oh for sure, for sure.
I thought the Paul George trade was pretty bad for the Clippers just because they've been to one Western Conference Finals, I believe, maybe. And if they don't win a championship, that was just a dumb trade. You gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and all those draft picks to build a duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard is on load management all the time. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was a stupid trade for the Clippers. I thought it was just way too much for Paul George. He's a fantastic player. It's just too much to give up for him. And then, the Boston Celtics, Brooklyn Nets trade, that's just fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he assembled the big three and then he traded Kevin Garnett. It was like Kevin Garnett, Joe Johnson. I can't think of
Paul Pierce was in that one.
Paul Pierce, Darren Williams. Like that was like the ultimate, like try to buy a championship, and they didn't do anything.
And then the Celtics, I believe, drafted Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with those picks. So I mean, it's just amazing.
They did, but after a few years, Brooklyn had the cap space to get Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant.
This is true.
They're a top seed in the East right now, up there with Boston. So,
how bad though was the Brooklyn Nets trade where they gave up Jared Allen though and Karis LeVert when they kind of already had like a good core of players before they got Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving? That has to be a bad trade too. I don't even remember who Brooklyn.
I'd have to look back, but yeah, I mean, I feel like they had drafted really well getting LeVert and Allen, and then they kind of just gave up. They're like, we're about to get superstars. We're going to win a championship, and then they haven't really won anything yet.
No, but I thought their team was pretty good with like D'Angelo Russell at the point guard, getting that All-Star nod that 1 year in Brooklyn. I thought that was a good core that they had built in Brooklyn before they traded all of it away, for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, with a shot at those guys. But
what do you think about the Anthony Davis trade as it stands?
Oh, dude, I love that. I mean, the Lakers did get a championship out of it, so it's not that bad. But I don't know, man. I think the Lakers could have probably won with Brandon Ingram on that squad, with LeBron James. If they had just given that a little
in the bubble, for sure, yeah. I mean, it's a Mickey Mouse ring. It doesn't count.
Yeah, I forget about that finals. I forgot about that one. I know that the Lakers got the championship with Anthony Davis, so that makes that trade not as bad, but you kind of fucked your future over with the Lakers, It's just, it was a stupid trade, even though they got the championship.
Yeah, I mean, that trade's not as bad. I think the Gobert and the Brooklyn trade definitely, as of late, been pretty bad.
Yeah.
Got this one. I think this is an interesting question because like I said, I could see this happening down the line. Do you see Bay and Stewart or Hayes getting packaged for a vet in the offseason?
I don't. No, I could see a package around Sadiq Bey and Killian Hayes. I am starting to think that Isaiah Stewart, like we have a lot of Pistons fans on Twitter right now calling him the heart and soul of this team. And it would be, and I know I've compared him to Nick Collison, and I'm not, and I was just saying, and I want to kind of walk that back a little bit. I wasn't saying like how they play, but just that the Oklahoma City Thunder, you could have offered them anybody for Nick Collison, they probably weren't going to trade him because he meant so much to that team and that organization. I'm starting to think Isaiah Stewart is starting to fall in that category with the Pistons. So even if a great vet did come up, I don't know if they would package Isaiah Stewart, but I could see them doing that with Sadiq Bey and Killian Hayes. I just think Isaiah Stewart means too much to this team, too much to this organization, and he really is starting to mean too much to the city of Detroit just for the way he plays. And, just, what he's been bringing these past few seasons being in Detroit.
Yeah, I think you could possibly see one of those players getting packaged for a veteran. If I did have to take a guess, it's probably going to be Bay. If I did have to take a guess, I feel like there's a lot of contending teams out there that love Sadiq Bey, and that should frighten you as Pistons fans.
Yeah.
Like it should just absolutely frighten you that contending teams want Sadiq Bey because they see that he's kind of playing out of position in Detroit. And they could probably turn him into a respectable, just 3-and-D guy and just be like a bench piece or just be a fifth option. But I don't think it's going to be this offseason, Dominique. I think it will be in the near future, though.
How would you rank those three, though, in order of getting traded for a vet? You said would be the high number one. So who would be number 2 and 3 for you?
I think Killian would be 2 and Stewart would be 3. I feel like Detroit, they really like the Stewart Duren combo, or the dog pound as they call themselves.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Jalen Duren said they called themselves the dog pound, which I was just like, bro, I need dog pound t-shirts like ASAP. But I think Killian would probably be number 2 on my list, and Stewart would be 3 because Stewart, to me, developing that 3-point shot, taking it to the hole more. I feel like he would be on the Detroit Pistons like do not trade list because they like that 4-5 combo.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think Stewart has the most value out of these 3 though? Just because he's that 4 that he's a pretty good defender. He can shoot the 3 ball now. He's been shown flashes of putting the ball on the ground and making him, I think he just has incredible value.
Yeah, I think Stewart definitely, he would probably be the highest value right now just because I feel like he's developed probably the most out of all of them.
Yeah.
Like the 3-point shot is developed into a respectable 3-point shot. Him, taking it to the basket. The one thing I really want, I know I'm going off topic, but the one thing I really want him to do this offseason is I want him to reach out to Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah.
I want him to develop a post game. If he develops a post game, then he becomes an all-around power forward that you want. I feel like if he develops some sort of post game where he can, back you up, have a mid-range jump shot, you're looking at a power forward that could possibly give you like 15 and 10 a night. Like that would be so great for the Pistons. But I would love to see him reaching out to, power forwards like Rasheed Wallace, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. Like I would love him to reach out to some of those OGs that really carved the way, back in, the late 90s to mid 2000s. This made a living out of the mid range.
Dude, when you just mentioned Rasheed Wallace, I just have visions of, you remember when he would do that turnaround fadeaway where his arms would be fully extended, it'd just be like a flick of the wrist? Isaiah Stewart has the wingspan and like the reach to do something like that. I remember Dwight Howard saying Rasheed Wallace's shot was the hardest to block in the NBA. Could you imagine if Isaiah Stewart developed something like that with his reach? You wouldn't be able to, you'd have to have Victor block it. Victor Wembanyama. He'd be the only guy that could block it.
Yeah, I just said Sheed because, like, to me, I've always felt like Rasheed Wallace was one of the most talented players of his generation, but he didn't really want to be the guy, right? Yeah. He was more of like a team success guy where like he would like sacrifice his game if it meant the team was winning. But no denying it, I think Rasheed could probably average 25 if he was selfish. That's why I would want Isaiah Stewart to work with him, just because he had a really good post game, had great footwork. That's why I mentioned Kevin Garnett too. I think Kevin Garnett was a really good power forward during his generation too. If he developed any kind of a post game, man, like he would probably be higher in the pecking order.
Man, do you feel like the sky's the limit for Isaiah Stewart?
Yeah, I mean, he's only in his third year. I mean, we probably really won't know what he is until like probably year 5 or year 6. So, I mean, the fact that he's putting this all together and going into his third year is definitely a positive sign.
Man, yeah, man, I there's the expectations for me with Isaiah Stewart have just gone through the roof. Love that kid, man.
All right. Okay, we got a Facebook question. Shout out to Simba, if that is your real name. If it is, that is a cool name. Made me think of Lion King. Uh, what you think of Ivy being the primarily ball handler the past few games?
I think it's important for his development. We were kind of talking about this. I haven't really been a huge fan of it, just because I think he has struggled being the primary ball handler, because he's still in that mode of like, look, I'm probably the most athletic guy on the floor. I'm just going to beat everybody down the field. Like, he still has no control over being the primary ball handler. But I love it for his development. It's not pretty though.
Yeah, like I said at the top of the podcast that I had a really shitty tweet saying that he looks more confident being the primary ball handler and being the point guard, because I've argued with Pistons fans over this. I don't value him as a shooting guard, even though he said he's a shooting guard at the beginning of the year. I just think he's at his best when the ball is in his hands and he's playing that point guard position. I mean, that's what he was doing at Purdue.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if he values himself as a shooting guard, I mean, I guess go for it. But I do like him having the ball in his hands more, because I think it opens up more for him and his teammates when he does have the ball in his hands. Now, he has played off ball basically all year next to Killian and next to Cade. And, he's had some pretty good success with it. But it's just such an interesting conversation, because you have 3 point guards, and, eventually you're going to have to choose between one of them.
No, it's a good question though, Simba. Appreciate that, man.
For sure. I think we've had this conversation too. This is from Banks again. I've been arguing with my boy, player for player. Who do you think has a better roster, Orlando or the Pistons? I say the Pistons. He says Orlando.
I would say the Pistons have a better roster 1 through 5, but the Orlando Magic have some really interesting pieces like Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Bobo. Like, the high-end talent for the Orlando Magic, I would probably say, is maybe a step above the Pistons, but from top to bottom, I think the Pistons have a better overall roster.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even mention Jonathan Isaac or Markel Fultz in there. Like, Isaac's been hurt, but I mean, like, before he got hurt, dude, he was like looking at like a defensive player of the year. But the Banks question, I think I would give the Pistons a slight, and I mean slight, advantage over the Magic. I think the Pistons and the Magic are going to be teams in the Eastern Conference that you see competing in the playoffs in a few years, because they have core pieces. Like, we have Cade, they have Paolo, we have, Jaden Ivey, they have Franz Wagner. Like, I think there are 2 rebuilding teams in the Eastern Conference that are neck and neck in terms of talent.
Yeah, I just think the top end talent for the Magic, like Paolo and Franz, like I said, and Bobo, very interesting pieces. There's a lot of talent between those 3 names. I didn't mention Jonathan Isaac. He's very talented too, but he just hasn't played. Markel Fultz, he's been hurt so much, man. I just kind of think this is who he is right now is basically what we're going to get. And the other reason too, I guess I would say I would take the Pistons roster. Their roster just makes more sense to me than the Orlando Magic. I still don't know what the Magic are doing, but you kind of have a clear idea of what the Pistons are doing with their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we didn't even mention Jalen Suggs either. He's having a hell of a season before he did get hurt. He was starting to figure it out, because I did have him in fantasy. He had a couple of games where I was like, wow, I got to go watch, Orlando Magic game, see what he's doing. Like, Jalen Suggs was starting to figure it out before he did get injured. But like I said, I think Orlando, they're going to be in the running for a top 5 pick, just like the Pistons. Well, maybe not anymore because they started winning games, but I think they'll come back down to reality.
Orlando does not need another top 5 pick. They don't need another top 10 pick. They have so many assets on their team already. Just figure it the fuck out before you get any more draft picks. Jesus. That's all I want for Orlando. Figure it out first. Stop taking players from teams that deserve it.
Right. I mean, you got San Antonio Spurs already getting custom-made Victor Wembanyama jerseys. So, I mean, they're all in.
That is a team jinxing themselves. You should not be doing that. Stay away from all that stuff.
It reminded me of when the Knicks were doing that with Zion. And they had the 3rd pick, and they had to draft RJ Barrett.
Dude, I'll never forget that. Just how disappointed. Did you see that video of that Knicks fan, though, recently after one of their games playing against I think, was it against Brooklyn? Oh, no, it was against the Dallas Mavericks. Dude, it's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen of a Knicks fan, dude.
Oh, for sure. We have another question from Simba watching on Facebook. Shout out to you, man. Simba is my real name. Okay, that's freaking awesome. Thank you for taking my question. How about Coach? Can Casey take us to the promised land?
No.
Let me be no. No, I don't think he can. I think that Dwayne Casey is a good development coach, but I just don't think the Pistons will win a championship under him. I think, to me, he's just kind of been a placeholder until a better coach does become available. I think a lot of Pistons fans, when you talk about coaches, you hear Udoka, you hear Mark Jackson. When we had James Edwards on, he mentioned a couple names where me and Lance were kind of shocked. He mentioned Juwan Howard. He had mentioned Jay Wright. Mentioned Jerry Stackhouse, who I've been kind of lobbying for. He actually did follow me on Instagram a couple weeks ago, so I was like, okay, it's official.
That's awesome.
It's official. But yeah, man, I just don't think he'll take us to the promised land. I think he'll be the coach next year, but I think once some of these top coaches do become available, I think you'll probably see the Pistons look for a younger coach. Maybe it's a guy on the bench like a Rashard Lewis. Maybe it's a guy like Jerome Allen from the Celtics, who's an assistant under Casey right now. I don't know, man. Like, it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I agree with Anthony on Coach Casey. Good at developing. He's a bridge coach where, he kind of he's in there to help you set the foundation. And maybe fans don't want to hear this, but he does get a lot out of these players. You can complain about the X's and O's and his substitutions and his management. And really something I'm starting to notice is at the end of the games, that dude, I just don't know if he knows what he's doing, because he just gives the ball to anybody and just says, go make something happen. That's not a coach that wins you a championship. You know what I'm saying? Like, a coach that wins you a championship, they know they know everything down to the smallest details about their team. They know how to get the absolute most. They're good with the X's and O's, and they're good at game management. And Dwayne Casey, decent coach, just lacks a few things to put him over the top. So, again, it's a hard no for me.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a coach that when he does retire, that some people assume that he'll go to a front office role or, have some kind of, basketball operations role if he wanted it. But I think the Pistons will probably stay, they'll hold tight with him for probably this season and next, even though seems like every other day I see, when are we going to fire Casey? Like, Casey needs to go. Like, it's the middle of the season. There's 3 months left. Like, we're not going to, fire him just to fire him, just to have a pound of flesh to blame it on, that we've won 10 games. Like, it's not going to happen.
I think you had said it, Anthony, one time. He gives you your best chance at a top 5 pick.
I've been saying that for 3 years. Like, literally. Well, plus Plus, the team's been bad, though. We have one more question, then we'll sign off because we've almost been on for 2 hours. This is from Dominique Davis again. Keldon Johnson is a restricted free agent this year. To me, he has the perfect type of Piston player. Do you think they give him an offer sheet?
Dude, I hope they do. I love Keldon Johnson, man. I have been trying to work every trade I possibly can in fantasy just to bring him over. Like, I don't want to, because I just think he's an underrated player and he's pretty solid. There's another guy for San Antonio that I really like, Romeo Langford. I'm kind of a fan of him.
Ew, no.
Is it Romeo Langford? Is he the guy he's the 23-year-old? He's been playing pretty good basketball for the Spurs.
No, I just don't like Romeo Langford at all.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah. I remember so many Pistons fans like wanted him out of the draft, and I was like, "You want the guy that can't shoot?"
Well, that was what Pistons. Dude, we drafted so many guys that can't shoot.
I know. I saw it on Twitter the other day. Like someone's just like, "If the Pistons do go in free agency, let's go get Romeo Langford." I was like, "It's like, why do you want to settle for less? Like, go get a big fish." Like, you're going to have the money. Dominique's question, I feel like Keldon Johnson and Sadiq Bey would be a Spider-Man meme. So
gosh.
They're like so similar. I feel like Keldon Johnson offensively has a little bit more in his bag, but they're so similar, and that'd be a really like, who would you pick to start? Who would you pick to come off the bench? Like, because they're so similar to each other.
Dude, I'd pick Keldon Johnson. I'm a huge fan of Keldon Johnson. I'm a huge fan. I laughed at the Spider-Man meme. That is funny, and I'm gonna walk my thing back about Romeo Langford. No, I'm good.
I told you he's trash.
No, I mean, I'm looking at like the overall numbers for him right now. Yeah, like I thought this guy when he was coming out of Indiana was considered a shooter. You know, I thought, and he has not found. I thought he was just drafted too. He's been.
I think it was a Sekou draft, I believe.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, I remember a lot of fans were like, "Yeah, I need Romeo Langford." I was like, "Why?"
Well, I had just looked at him in fantasy, and I was like looking at his games. I'm like, "Oh, this guy's starting to figure it out. This is pretty cool. He's shooting like almost 40% from three. This is great." But I'm looking at his overall numbers, and yeah, dude.
Okay. True that, Dominic. He is.
Yeah.
Shout out to Stanley Johnson. Oh man, but this was a really fun podcast. Had a lot of fun. I think it was like 2 weeks since the last time we did one. With the holidays and all, I was a little bit busy. But why don't you tell the people where they can find the podcast, where they can support it, and sign us off?
Yeah, no problem. Just want to deliver one thing real quick. I just want to say I appreciate the Pistons Talk community on these things. I sometimes get away from social media because I don't really like to interact that way, but interacting with you guys is a great thing. So I'm going to share something with you guys. It's a little personal, but I want to share with everybody because you guys are such a great community of people that watch us. I think I believe when we first started this podcast, I had told everybody that me and my fiance were having a baby. We just found out the sex on Christmas. I'm having a boy. I already have a daughter, but I'm going to have a boy. So woo, woo, congratulations to me. Just wanted to share that with all of you guys, just because you guys seriously have been great. And I do appreciate everybody that watches this on YouTube, watches it on Facebook, but also listens to the podcast. Thank you guys seriously for all the support. You guys are awesome. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And, if you guys all signed off after that, that's cool. But that's it. I'm having a boy. But here is the closing. Thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor. Go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.